Viewer discretion is advised.
Wearing a face mask, so they think that it's going to protect them from virus. But the virus isn't floating around in the air, so it's not protecting me against anything because it's not there. It's probably going to be on my hand because I've shaken hands with someone who's got the virus, and I have transmitted it. I have carried the virus to my face. But logically, if you're not close to people, they're not coughing and sneezing on you, then a face mask isn't necessary. The virus enters the body through mucous membranes. We mean the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and it transmits from person to person, generally by us touching our eyes, nose or mouth, or if we're inhaling droplets directly from someone who is sneezing or coughing. The best way for the general public to protect itself against coronavirus and other respiratory viruses is really careful hand hygiene. So that's really washing your hands with either soap and water or alcohol gel if soap and water is not available. One of the problems, if lots of people who don't need face masks are using face masks or stockpiling them, it means that there aren't enough face masks available where they're really needed.
How long does this virus live on surfaces?
Now, we know coronavirus can last on cardboard for 24 hours, and so the concern is not so much the food preparation itself, because restaurants are doing a good job of making sure that nobody's sick as preparing it, but it's on the actual cardboard container. So a couple things you can do. If you're getting fruits or vegetables, you definitely want to wash them off like you do with anything else, just to make sure that any of those foodborne illnesses aren't present. The cardboard container itself, especially if you're concerned about it, one of the things you want to do is open up the container, use some utensils to pull out the food and put it on a plate, and then throw the container out, wash your hands, and then go ahead and eat the food. You know, it's the same thing with the delivery, because the cardboard containers could theoretically have it. So again, you want to be careful when you're handling those. Take everything out of the box and wash your hands. You know, the other concern is, could the delivery person be sick? Could they be having an issue? One thing you can do there is have them deliver just outside your door, leave it there. You know, they go away, you go outside and pick it up. And same thing, once you handle the containers, take everything out, wash your hands, throw the containers out, wash your hands, and then go about your business doing whatever you need to do with the things you ordered. You definitely need to maintain that distance when you're outside, and that's that 6-foot distance. So if you're going for a walk, if you're going for a run, you don't want to be shoulder to shoulder. Some people are playing tennis. Tennis is okay, you're on opposite sides of the court, but remember, you're handling the same ball, and so you have to make extra sure that you wash your hands before you touch your face if you're doing that. But the name of the game, whether you're inside or outside, is to keep that 6 foot of separation, because we know that's how far the virus can go. We want to make sure we're further away than that. And Willie, as humans, we're social animals. We like to be around each other, especially children. They like to be around each other. They like to know they're safe. And so one of the things to remember is, with all this isolation, we need to find ways to connect ourselves. And that's where social media can come in very handy, you know, through FaceTime, through Skype, through any other method you can. And even if it's as simple as picking up the phone and making that phone call and just talking to people so everybody knows you're okay, you know everybody else is okay. And remember, too, we're in the middle of not just an epidemic, but an infodemic. There's a lot of information.
And how long it lives on surfaces, how long it stays in the air, and how it's transmitted. Person-to-person spread of the virus mainly occurs through respiratory droplets. Whenever an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks, those droplets can infect another person if it makes contact with the mucous membranes. By mucous membranes, I mean the eyes, inside the nose, and the mouth. Infection can also occur if a person touches a surface that has the virus, and then they get on their hands, and then they touch their either eyes, nose, or mouth. Droplets don't typically travel more than 6 feet, and there's now a new non-peer-reviewed study that just came out by NIH that shows the virus remains in aerosol, meaning in the air, for up to 3 hours. Although airplanes do filter the air, it's not 100% effective at filtering out all of the aerosol. Also, because the virus spreads through contact as well, having a bunch of people on an airplane is a recipe to spread the virus. How long does this virus live on surfaces? They determined that the virus lives up to 4 hours on copper, up to 24 hours on cardboard, and 2 to 3 days on plastic and stainless steel. And this is part of the reason why the virus is spreading like crazy. Then you throw in the fact that some people are infected who don't have any symptoms at all. Or if they do have symptoms, it sometimes takes up to 2 weeks before they start showing those symptoms. In other words, the incubation period is up to 14 days, although on average the incubation is about 5 to 6 days. But because of this incubation period, That means that the virus silently spreads during this time, and that's another reason why it's so hard to slow the spread of the virus. And that's why the number of cases is going to continue to rise. Each person can do something about that. It's not just about staying home as much as you can. It's also about washing your hands diligently and doing it correctly. Let's be real. Most of us don't wash our hands enough, and most of us don't wash our hands correctly. But come on now, this is no excuse not to wash your hands after you use the bathroom. And when it comes to hand sanitizer, think of that as a backup to soap and water. Like when you need to wash your hands but don't have access to soap and water, that's the time that you're going to want to use the hand sanitizer if you can get it, because everything is off the shelves now. And if you have access to disinfectant wipes, wipe down commonly used surfaces. Avoid sick people. Avoid large crowds. Skip the handshakes for now. We understand. No big deal.
And what I would say now is that if you're not quarantined, you should act as though you are quarantined. So we really are encouraging people to stay home and avoid all contacts. And that means even contacts with family. Just stay with the people that are in your immediate home and don't expose yourself to anybody outside of that if you don't have to.
And what about something like taking the kids or the grandkids to a playground? Is that okay?
Not unless that playground is completely empty. And so, we contemplated that ourselves, but the reality is that if a few different people have that idea, then a few different people are there. So we're just not in a position where even that is a great idea right now.
Self-isolation, 14 days.
And Andrew, I'll add to that you may be returning from a foreign destination. You may feel like you're fine, but in the last few days in particular, we've now seen studies suggesting that many people will be able to transmit this pre-symptomatically, which means before they develop symptoms, and in some cases asymptomatically. So you may be able to spread this without even being sick. And so it's absolutely essential that you go straight home and don't make any stops and then start your self-isolation. So unfortunately, the symptoms of this are really the same symptoms as you get with the common cold. So people will get sore throat, they might get a runny nose, fevers, body aches, they can get a cough. The sort of red flag, which indicates that it's gone onto the lungs and it's now become more serious, is if you get short of breath.
And if you have any of those symptoms, are you supposed to just assume that you have COVID-19 and sort of go into self-isolation?
In an ideal world, I would say that you should get tested, but probably because we don't have enough test kits around, we're still limiting testing to people who have symptoms and who have traveled. So the answer is yes, you should self-isolate in case you do have this.
Well, if you're not socially distancing yourself and your friend sneezes, for example, that's why we talk about 2 meters, that's 6 feet apart, because again, things can stick to surfaces. Hard surfaces are what the coronavirus likes more, and remember, hours to days is how long it can last, so it could technically last on your jacket, especially if you haven't spent enough time apart.
And are you supposed to then, disinfect your jacket every time you come home?
Well, again, within reason. But again, this is where we want to up our cleaning and making sure that if we do think that someone sneezed on our jacket or whatever, yeah, put it in the wash.
When I wash my hands, should I use warm or cold water?
At a very practical level, it doesn't matter. As long as you're washing your hands with soap and water, that's all that matters. And also, if there's no soap and water available, alcohol hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol is also just sufficient as well.
But does temperature matter? Because we have actually gotten questions where people have asked, okay, if I have mail or my newspaper, is there a way to disinfect that? I don't know, by sticking to the freezer or something.
In all fairness, we know the virus can stick to different surfaces for different amounts of time. And a lot of it does depend on the temperature and the environment around it. It can stick to surfaces for about 2 hours to 2 days, depending on the surface and the surrounding temperature. So the key message is, if you are touching some high contact surfaces, just wash your hands afterward.
So as long as you're using regular laundry detergent or soap and a regular rinse cycle, you're fine in terms of the laundry portion itself. And then when it comes to being in the laundry room, which is a shared facility, practice your social distancing, keep your 2 meters distance, make sure you are washing your hands either with soap and water before and after or with the alcohol disinfectants. So I don't think that you would need to sort of change the way you're using your heater or your air conditioner in your living facility.
Since COVID-19 can cause pneumonia.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent idea for people who are eligible to get this vaccine and who are recommended to get the vaccine to absolutely get the vaccine. If that's part of someone's routine vaccine schedule, 100% it's a great idea to get this vaccine. In case they get this infection, they'll have a much better chance of fighting it off.
So it depends again on your state of health before you get COVID-19 and then how badly it impacts you. So if you're an otherwise sort of young, healthy person, for your average healthy adult, probably about a week, maybe, you know, a little bit longer, but not much longer, similar to if you had the flu. And then certainly for those people that are sicker and requiring hospitalization, then that would move into weeks. And at the real sort of end of the spectrum for people that are needing ICU, and that's for the complication that we call ARDS, or acute respiratory distress syndrome, then you're talking multiple weeks. There were some studies that were out there on like whether or not people were having positives or negatives if they were re-swabbing, and these were really qualitative tests that they were using, so not ideal. Once you recover, there's no reason why we think you can get an infection again. And then once you're asymptomatic, really people are saying between 48 to 72 hours of being asymptomatic following that infection, and then you're okay to start sort of seeing other people again and not being worried about infecting them.
The coronavirus has mutated, and the second strain is more aggressive than the original. A group of scientists and researchers from 6 research centers in China documented the mutation in a report published in late February. It analyzed 103 cases from around the world, with the majority of them from China's Hubei province, where the virus first appeared. Keep in mind, viruses are always mutating, particularly RNA viruses such as the COVID-19 coronavirus. However, a genetic analysis of the cases showed that the COVID-19 coronavirus evolved into 2 major types, the S-type and the L-type. Let's take a closer look at each one. The S-type, which had infected about 30% of cases examined, is considered to be the older of the two and is likely to have appeared when the virus jumped from animals to humans. The L-type, which infected around 70% of the cases, is thought to have emerged afterwards. And according to the report, it replicates faster in human populations, causing it to accumulate more mutations, and is more aggressive than the S-type due to the potentially higher transmission rates. So, should we be even more worried? In an article published by New Scientist magazine, Ian Jones, professor of virology at the University of Reading, says the differences in the strains are minute and won't change the way the virus works or is transferred. This helps explain why the trials for a vaccine target the protein that binds COVID-19 to human cells rather than the virus itself. However, the report by the Chinese scientists also revealed that although the L-type was the more aggressive of the 2 strains, the number of L-type infections fell in January. It suggests that the rapid and comprehensive prevention and control measures implemented by the Chinese government reduced infections of the L-type, leading to an abundance of S-type infections, which are now more common. However, the report cautions that sample size was limited and more data is required for further analysis, particularly as the virus spreads. Epidemiologists widely agree that once infected with the coronavirus, patients are unlikely to catch it again, unless the virus mutates to such a point that it can overcome our immune defenses. The best way to prevent that from happening is to gather as much data as possible and keep tabs on the number of mutations as scientists race to develop a vaccine.
So